Hello, my name is Tucker Johnson, and I am your host today as we experience NIMSY Live, where we talk about the latest and greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, culturalization, and all that fun stuff global companies need to delight their international customers, or at least not piss them off too much. On this program, we invite guests who like to have fun and have some value to add for our audience of globalization professionals. I'm always eager to provide a platform to those with a good story or a good data set. So let us know if there are any topics you would like covered or guests we should reach out to for future episodes. If you haven't already done so, make sure that you're subscribed to NIMSY Insights. Now's your chance. Whether you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you're logging in today, you can follow us there. And if you do follow or subscribe to us, you will be one of the first people to know when we schedule new live streams and or publish new research on localization and globalization available at nimsy.com. A little bit about the platform. Most of y'all are joining us on LinkedIn Live today. We like doing things on LinkedIn because that's where everybody's at. And if you are, then I encourage you, make sure to be introducing yourself in the comments. We're going to bring the comments up on screen here. If you have any questions, comments, criticisms during the live stream, then we will bring those up later in the stream and make sure that we are addressing those. So go ahead and engage. This is a social network, so get sociable. Well, without further ado, let's introduce today's topic and guests. More with less is a common refrain for localization directors. During challenging economic times, the need for localization does not go away, but as budgets are being cut, localization professionals need to get creative. How can buyers leverage their supply chain to optimize the localization spend? How is technology helping to resolve this challenge? What role do we expect Chat GPT and other conversational AI to play in the future of localization? In this episode, we are joined by Jonas Ryberg and Zhang, two of the minds behind the State of Localization report from Centific, to hear about how global companies respond to economic downturns without sacrificing their localization efforts. About Jonas Ryberg. Jonas is the Chief Globalization Officer at Centific with a long history of building organizations and businesses through strong people and customer focus and strategic thinking. Zhang is the VP of Localization Technology at Centific and co-author of How an Economic Downturn Affects Localization. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I tried my best to introduce you. Let's give you a second. What did I miss out? Tell us a little bit more about yourselves. Jonas.
Hey, Tucker. Happy to be here again. It's always good talking to you.
Yeah.
You did well. So I manage globalization at Centific. I think another important aspect here, we want to talk about doing more with less, and not only from a supplier perspective, but also from a buyer perspective, right? So I've also been on the buyer side. I've seen some of the challenges from that perspective as well. So I was managing globalization at the business intelligence software company a while back as well, in addition to being at Centific.
Well, welcome. Yeah, welcome back. This is certainly not your first appearance on the NIMSY Live podcast, so welcome back. And this is your first time on the NIMSY Live podcast. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Tucker. First of all, I like your co-host on your shoulder very much, and it's so cute.
Yeah, until she chews through my microphone cord, I think we'll be okay.
So nice to be here. It's such an honor to talk to you guys and to talk to the audience. I've been looking forward to say how technology can solve the problems from, I totally agree with Jonas, from the buyer's side. You know, I've been working in localization industry for a long time, for more than 20 years. Most of the time I was on the buyer side, I was in the industry side. So how do we use technology? How do we use automation? How do we keep innovating in localization processes? That's the key. So we'll talk about this today. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. So just to provide a little bit of structure, I want this to be, as usual, this is an open conversation with you two gentlemen, as well as anybody in chat who chimes in. But just provide a little bit of structure. Here's kind of what I wanted to get through today. Well, of course, we're going to talk about economic downturns and localization. And in that article that you'd written, we looked at 3 localization trends. So I want to cover that. We're going to look at the state of localization in 2023 and feature the latest report from Centific on that, just because it's a very interesting research I think people need to be aware of. And of course, talking about lovable customer experiences and AI in localization. So let's dive right into our conversation here without further ado and talk about economic downturns and localization. And I have a quote here from an article which I'm going to drop into chat here as soon as I get done talking. The article is called How an Economic Downturn Affects Localization. Wei, you were one of the co-writers on it. It says businesses seeing the bumpy road ahead are under more pressure than ever to cut costs and operate more efficiently while maintaining quality and protecting time to market. What does that mean to their localization efforts? And how can localization help a business not only survive a recession, but also improve its globalization efforts? And I wanted to highlight this quote because I think it sets up well kind of the conversation that we wanted to have here today, where a lot of people are finding themselves, a lot of organizations are finding themselves in crunch mode, essentially, especially the technology sectors. There's been some downsizing happening recently, and localization programs have been affected by that. And I want to talk about this concept of decreasing budget doesn't always necessarily mean we have to decrease quality, decrease lovable user experiences, decrease time to market, things like that. And Wei, in your article, you'd mentioned 3 trends that we wanted to look at here today. Localization empowering going into new markets, the power of outsourcing, and the power of technology. So maybe we can kind of keep the conversation focused around that. But Wei, I'll turn it over to you right now. How do you see these trends affecting global companies during an economic downturn, or perhaps preparing for an economic downturn?
Yes, I will go first. Jonas is also expert in this too, and he will help me to keep expanding this. So for the economy downturn, new market is becoming more important, especially for the emergency market in international, right? Companies need to keep expanding their business, keep exploring new opportunities. So the easiest way is for the new products and new technologies, but the market is important. Going international is one of the trending solutions for large companies. That's why we're seeing even in the economy downturn, in the difficult time, going to keep exploring new markets is one of the solutions for the large companies to keep expanding their business. And also, outsourcing is kind of a trend. It's been the trending for so many years. We have been doing a lot of outsourcing work. We have been using international resources to do this. But recently, we have the new technologies, so many new technologies in the market, which is helping a lot to solve the problem. I just mentioned Chat GPT and AI solutions. Really brings the differences to the market. We want to talk about that, how to use the technologies. Many in the company is focusing using technologies, adopting the technologies, implementing technologies in localization processes. And I will transfer here to Jonas.
Thank you, Wei. A lot to unpack, both in the quote and in those 3 trends, right?
Right.
I don't know where to start, to be honest, but I think you did well, Wei, in sort of summarizing it. Definitely on the first one, right? So using localization in order to protect your market share, but also to expand, right? So it doesn't have to be all bad when we move into a recession. I think Nimze is a big proponent of the concept of localization being a recession proof, right? That companies actually need to expand into new markets in order to avoid degrowing potentially in a recession, right?
Degrowing. I love that term. I'm going to use that from now on.
Right. So that it is something that we've seen, that we see new requests coming in, and we're trying to talk about how can we support that from a localization perspective. And then the other aspect that you listed was outsourcing. So clearly, if you're trying to do more with less in a buyer organization, you might have gone through downsizing of staff. You can rely on a partner to do more. A trend that we've seen, it's actually an uptick in RFPs and requests for proposals over the last several months, as some of our clients have gone through the motions of the situation, the environment that we're in, is that they're doing RFPs in order to validate their supplier base and find opportunities to find maybe new partners or deepen the relationships with the partners that they have. And some of that is going towards a single sourcing strategy, where of course they could get more from their partner if they consolidate some of their spend into that one player. And that could be just economies of scale and so on. It doesn't mean that they get just lower rates, but that they do more, which opens up opportunities for the supplier to invest more in that relationship and so on as well.
So you're seeing a lot of RFPs, and yeah, just to your point here, that is one thing we say at NIMSY, is that the localization industry is recession-proof. In good times, people need translations. In bad times, people need translations. It's not something that there's a lot of discretionary cost there, at least for serious companies that want to continue servicing their global customers. But for these, you mentioned you're seeing still a lot of RFPs happening these days, and you mentioned that people are kind of shopping the market, trying to see what is out there. Going beyond just cost, because cost is a part of every RFP. We want to make sure that we're, paying the fair market rate for everything. What are some of the focus areas that you're seeing in RFPs being issued?
I think it's looking forward, right? What else can we do, both on the supplier and buyer side, in order to navigate the current circumstances? So, are there smarter ways of working, or would there be opportunities in working more with your supplier on uplifting your ways of working, or handing over certain tasks to your supplier and so on? And I think it's also something that just needs to happen internally in a lot of organizations as a localization buyer, in order to be able to report up to your management that we did our work here, we did our homework, and looked at our suppliers and found various ways of using the budget in a better way, perhaps, or just making sure that we're taking advantage of the latest technologies.
Yeah, we see a lot of that here at NIMSY. We do a lot of what we call, and it's, every time I say this, I have to admit it's a horribly branded term, but localization program audits, because everybody hates an audit, right? I don't know why we call them audits, but we do a lot of that work and going in and, taking a look at people's current processes and tech stack. And because people don't know, on the client side, if I'm working at Google for the last 5 years, just to pick a random name, if I'm working at Google for the last 5 years, then I know very well how that localization program is done at Google, because I've been there, I've been elbows deep in it. What I don't have that awareness of is always, how are other companies doing it? Am I using the current best technology to solve my challenges? Because I'm not being exposed to those things on a daily basis. And I think that's where this concept of outsourcing that we bring in, it plays nicely. All of these kind of play nicely with each other, is because by outsourcing, you're using vendors, and they're the experts in the technology and the latest practices, and they know how other people are doing it because they're working with those other people. So that's a plug for any program out there that's kind of wanting to figure out, are we using the best and the most modern processes, technology? You don't have to run an audit. I mean, you can call NIMSY and run an audit. You can do the poor man's audit, which is go to RFP and let the vendors tell you what they're up to. And that's usually a good way to get an understanding of what's available out there on the market.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. There is no such thing called standard localization process or localization program. Everything should be customized with the customer's needs. So different customers have different needs and the different situations. So we don't consider ourselves as a vendor. We consider we're partners. We work closely with the customers together to design, to implementing the latest technologies to fit their needs. So I've been doing a lot with using technologies and customizing the localization process and with the customer's needs in the past. You're so true about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's so this is, and for those of you, I promised that I was going to put it into chat. We have the article available via Centific's website here. How economic downturns affect localization. I'm going to go put that in chat right now, but first let me introduce our next topic here, which is the state of localization. And you guys publish every year, and I always look forward to this. You publish the State of Localization report. So the 2023 edition is now available. I'll put a link to that in chat as well. Or maybe Teresa, if you're watching, you can provide some air support and be linking to some of these things in chat. And in here, you guys also talk about the how to manage downturns to a certain extent. But you also make some recommendations on how to address these and how to increase efficiency, which is to say how to do more with less. We're talking about diversified talent pool, business intelligent technologies, localization starting with the content creation stage, adopting automation and machine translation. And I realized we could probably take any one of these topics and talk for a good 20 minutes about it. But I wanted to throw this over at you guys since this is your report. Give us a sneak peek on what's in the report. Pick one or two of these topics and let us know what's in store.
Yeah. So we wrote this report back in January or so. We published it, I think, late January, early February. Of course, the industry has changed.
So it's out of date.
It's
2 weeks later, it was out of date.
How much has happened in the last 2 months. So it's still a good read, though. So I don't want to tell you guys that don't read it because it's outdated. So we touch on a lot of stuff in there. So it's doing more with less. Localization in an economic downturn is a good first chapter in the report with some thoughts around that. And then we have I think it's 4 other chapters in there, different angles on localization and where we are as an industry right now. And of course, as you said, Tucker, there's a lot of stuff that sort of interlinks or interlocks in that. We talk a lot about, obviously, I've been on this podcast before talking about AI and localization, so maybe we don't have to spend too much time on that. But there's a couple of chapters in there on that as well. And if I really like the latest trends in the industry on that topic is really intriguing when we think about large language models and AI and localization, obviously, and it's all the rage, right? Everyone's talking about it. But for us, it's fascinating, and I think when I've talked to you before, Tucker, we've talked about the convergence of AI and localization, and it's really happening, right? We're all of us are in the epicenter of AI right now with language. So if we think about a few of those topics, so we talk about talent, for example, the talent pool, and we talk about technology, and we talk about AI, and we talk about localization. So one topic that I'm really excited about is reinforcement learning with human feedback, with large language models, and how we can make sure that the AI is aligned with human preferences. So essentially what that means is that you have a large language model, you're getting some kind of output in that, and then you want to make sure that that output is reviewed by humans. So there's a human in the loop that provides feedback on the AI to teach it basically how to align with human preferences. And for us as an industry, it's a great opportunity to provide that review. It's essentially what we've been doing with post-editing of machine translation for the last 5 or 10 years, however long people have used machine translation. So that's something that we are really excited about. In fact, maybe we should publish an updated version of the report with a chapter on that particular topic. But I would just want to call that out. I think it's a great opportunity for the entire industry to look at how we can provide that reinforcement learning through human feedback, not only to localization buyers, but to anyone who's using large language models.
And how do buyers typically go around that? Because in the localization industry, traditionally it's heavily centered on the supply chain, the value chain, the suppliers, outsourced a lot of services, outsourced expertise, and all that stuff. And as you mentioned, AI is kind of coming in and just disrupting I hate to use that word lightly, but let's use it for the sake of this conversation. AI is coming in and disrupting the language services space. Are buyers choosing to outsource AI services to vendors, or are they keeping it in-house? If they're outsourcing it to vendors, are they going with specialized AI vendors? Are they going with their language vendors? What services are they outsourcing? Talk to me a little bit about how AI plays into the supply chain.
For me, AI is not just one of the solutions. AI is a technology. So we are implementing that into every single step in localization. When we talk about localization, I really like the State of Localization, the article, because it describes the end-to-end process from source content management, automation, content publishing, content management, the translation, QA, and performance management, right? So we are trying to introduce AI to the customer for each step. AI can be implemented into the source content analyzing, can be used for automation, can be used for translation generation, and generating the translation for the different cultures, and we call it transcription, the customization. Also, AI can play the important role in QA. Also, as Jonas just mentioned, in performance management, in resource management. So AI can be implemented in each step of the localization processes.
So would it be accurate for me to think about AI more as a productivity tool that's woven throughout the process rather than a replacement for any of the existing processes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you guys, you talk a lot about. Let's just go there. Why don't we? You talk a lot about this human in the loop and mindful AI. And let me read another excerpt here from the State of Localization report. Once again, 3 months old. So everything, the world has completely changed since then, but I think it's still relevant. AI localization is about localizing AI products, tools, and services to work in their respective markets. Localizing AI means training AI with localized data. In other words, collecting and curating data sets that respond to cultures in different markets. In addition, localization experts increasingly use AI and machine learning engines as essential tools for enhancing end customer experience and driving customer satisfaction and loyalty. In this context, localization is no longer about just translating files, text, and software for human consumption. Language translation is part of AI localization, but AI localization also includes localized experiences that people love, no matter what country they live in, experiences that resonate based on their own cultures. And I love this quote because it speaks to the necessity of keeping the human touch, keeping the human in the loop, as I believe the report mentions it. And you talk about this concept of mindful AI. Can we go? And I know we're getting a little off topic here, but it's a fascinating topic, and I just wanted to pick your guys' brain on it. What is mindful AI?
Yeah, so a couple of things, a couple of comments are based on the quote and generally also on the report, right? So I think actually that topic, AI localization, is even more pertinent now than it was in January, obviously, because the uptake of AI is just exploding. It's everywhere. It will be everywhere in the next few months, as we've seen in the media, right? So definitely, it's very important to consider that human in the loop aspect. I mean, you probably saw the Future of Life Institute with a bunch of luminaries asking for a halt on AI development for 6 months, because we want to make sure that it's aligned with the interests of humanity. I don't want to sound like I'm
the preservation
here,
of the human existence. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to be mindful when you consider AI and how you use it and how you deploy it. And the way of being mindful is to have humans in the loop, to make sure that it's aligned with human preferences. And human alignment is actually a sort of a concept, a term that is pretty common now when you talk about large language models. That you want to make sure that the output is aligned with human preferences and not just something that is the AI hallucinates and so on, right? So it's an extremely important topic. and going back a little bit, backtracking to your previous questions about, or question about who do companies turn to when it comes to AI and training AI and so on, I think it's both language companies and specialized AI companies. And they turn to language companies because we have that experience, right? We have been adopting content to make sure that it's suitable for the target audience forever, since that's the concept or the definition of localization, right? Is making sure that it resonates with the audience in the particular market. And now it's just taking that concept and moving it into the space of AI, and having someone like a language service provider with that experience, the experience of managing large volumes, having access to a large talent pool and global reach, is fundamental aspects of being able to deliver that human in the loop aspect. So again, it's a huge opportunity for all of us in the industry to work with these companies and provide mindful AI training.
How much of the AI work being done out there by client side companies or researchers or stuff like that, how much are they taking into account the global component, the localization component, the multilingual components? Are they doing a pretty good job with that, of making sure that they're developing things that are relevant across cultures, markets, and languages? Or is it something like we've seen a lot in the localization industry, where other markets, other languages are kind of an afterthought?
I think it's really evolved a lot over the last couple of years in the space of AI, that it used to be something that was developed in a country like the US for the most part, or in China.
Mm-hmm.
I think Europe is catching up, but definitely most of it is developed in the US or China still. And it used to be the case that it was focused on the origin market of the AI, but
Okay.
it's definitely evolved a lot. And it's not only from a global perspective or a country perspective or locale perspective, it's also from an ethnicity perspective, or different types of users that are different to your typical user persona. So I think companies are actually doing a pretty good job in that at this point. It wasn't the case a few years ago, but it's evolved a lot.
What about, you hear talk about this occasionally, there's a report that comes out about bias in AI. And where does bias in AI come from? And let's just use an example that everyone that's in the news and people can probably relate to. Is AI not taking into account different cultures, different races and ethnicities, and cultural sensitivities like that? Where does that come from? Is that just the AI being racist, or does that come from the humans that are training it? And how can companies, how can suppliers, outsource suppliers, help fix that problem?
For me, AI is it's a large language model. It's a machine learning. It automatically learns the content from the internet, from networking. So it learns. It depends what kind of a content it reads and how people train it. This echoes the point Jonas just mentioned, people in the loop. To adopt the AI solution from the technical point of view, you're not just enabled an engine. You are actually build up the engine by customizing that, fine-tuning that, and training that, evaluating that, and testing that. The training it is important part, right? We need to evaluate, we need to double check, we detect the differences. And this is why people in the loop is so important. The expertise, linguistic expertise, is not just a translation experts. They understand the local culture. They understand the different needs from the local customers. That can help to identify the issues from the AI's resource. And also that can help to fine-tune the AI to make sure it's aligned with the point, aligned with the culture, aligned with the local issues. So this is important for us to keep monitoring. And there's so much content on the internet that I can learn anything, but how do we control that? How do we manage that? How do we evaluate it? How do we redirect that? This is important for us.
Sorry, you caught me mid-coffee sip there. Yeah, so you hear this a lot, like the AI needs to be trained, which necessitates, if something is learning, something is being trained, then somebody is teaching. Somebody is doing the training. And I think that's where we start to see this mindful AI, this human in the loop come in. And from a localization perspective, some of the practical, when folks for years, I feel, have thought of AI, when you talk about AI and localization, we're talking about machine translation, right? That's just kind of the logical, AI, machine translation. But there's also all of these other different applications for artificial intelligence that can be used to increase productivity. Not to stray too far here from the topic of today's supposed topic of today's conversation, which is how to increase efficiency and manage an economic downturn. What are some of the ways that we see AI beyond machine translation, like practical ways? What are some of the applications being used in the supply chain or to manage the localization process, in terms of vendor management, vendor selection, in terms of workflow routing, in terms of automated or hybrid quality checks? Can we talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. I can take a first stab at it, and I'm sure Wei will have a lot to add to it. You mentioned a bunch of good use cases, Tucker. I think one thing that we've seen really good success on in terms of doing more with less using AI is in the project management side of things. So we have a few really large programs where we localize high volumes of content with a high number of translators as well. And in that, in order to track performance and make decisions on what to do QA on and so on, we use anomaly detection, AI-based anomaly detection, to pick out certain things that we should really make sure that we look at. So basically manage by exception or do QA by exception instead of QAing everything or manually managing everything. That could be if someone is spending a very long time on a segment or a very short time on a segment, that would be flagged with this anomaly detection system to as something that would require further checking. And that could be across quality or just overall deliveries as well. If something was delivered very quickly, that might also mean that we need to do a little bit of extra QA on that to make sure that they didn't rush through the translation job and delivered lower quality output, even if they have had a good track record of high quality before. And then, of course, there's a number of different ways of doing smart QA as well, in using AI to decide what content to do the review on or do a deeper review on based on past performance and so on. And then in the space of large language models, there's a lot of really interesting research that we've been doing, and we've started deploying it in some programs as well. Wei has been doing a lot of that with our R&D team. So maybe Wei, you want to comment on that part?
Yes. So totally. We are using AI in different areas from the end to end, as just mentioned. From the very beginning, we're trying to use AI for source content analyzing, right? In the industry, people keep saying garbage in, garbage out. So we should be able to help the content creation team to create a better content for localization, to remove the issues of localizabilities or globalization issues from the code. So AI can play the important role in there. It can help us to read the content and to find the localizability issues automatically. That's one thing. The second thing, we're trying to enable the localization process by providing more localization assistance to linguistic translators to help them. For example, to give them the context of the article. Sometimes the translator just read the segments, but by using AI, we can summarize the content. We can also use AI to read the instructions, read the style guide, read the developer comments for each segment, so the translators can be, their job can be much more efficient and easier for doing that. And then, as Jonas mentioned, we're doing a lot of research. How do we use AI to do the pre-QA, pre-validation, before we do the human QA field validation? We can automatically detect some potential issues. We can also analyzing the translation quality by providing some scores for the strings, so we can help the human reviewers to pre-detect some potential issues. And also, AI can play an important role for transcription. So we can ask AI to create multiple suggestions to retranscribe our local content or so, and the reviewers or the linguist specialists can see the suggestions from AI, can make this more efficient. For me, AI doesn't replace the machine translation. Instead, AI is an add-on. It's much above the machine translation, can bring the automation and the efficiencies to localization. We have been doing a lot, for in the past few years, and by using AI into different steps for into our localization process. Also, we talk to a lot of customers. Our executive, we have so many good customers with us. We've been talking to each of them to find the way, which the best feature we can help the customer developer by using AI to address their concerns and problems.
So, in all of, just to highlight here, like what I'm hearing in all of those use cases that you had just listed off, I didn't hear any replacement going on, because I think this is the fear. This is anytime a new technology comes in, whether that new technology is translation memories, machine translation, or now artificial intelligence, is the fear is, well, we're all out of jobs. We're going to be replaced. And you especially hear that from the translation community as well a lot. But all of that stuff that you just listed, I didn't hear anything getting replaced. I hear it like process improvement or adding tools to the toolkits of the translator, of the project manager, of the vendor manager. And, I'm reminded of this old saying, I'm not even sure where it comes, but it's, humans aren't going to be replaced by machines. Humans are going to be replaced by other humans that know how to work with these machines, right? So what type of training are you guys undergoing at Centific to make sure that your team members or what does that look like internally? How are your guys' internal teams being trained up in the latest technologies?
That's a great question, actually. Very, very a topic that we've discussed a lot recently on our side, and connecting back to the mindful AI topic as well. So we recently formed a responsible AI committee within the organization. We have people that are really curious and eager to use new tools like Chat GPT in their work, various different ways, all the use cases that Wei mentioned, but also for things like review emails and stuff like that and improve on text. But we need to be responsible in how we use those tools, right? So that's one of the trainings that we have put a lot of effort into. So don't use AI to train AI, for example. Don't put
Right.
sensitive content into the AI engine. Don't use Chat GPT with anything that is sensitive content or confidential content, essentially. So that's one of the core areas where we're looking at doing training. Other than that, we have a great R&D team that is investing a lot in finding out how to use AI, but also being mindful and responsible in how they use it. And they keep our teams up to date on that. So we're doing things like weekly program reviews where we pick one program to review every week, not only from an AI perspective, but in general, right? So that we are able to do internal trainings that way, but there's still room for additional trainings there because things are moving so fast, right? It's constantly changing. So we need to make sure that we stay on top of that.
The first thing we did was as Jonas mentioned, we created a committee, but the most important thing we did was we created guidance for the whole company. So the guidance, including one thing is on the top is the privacy, how to protect the content, the security for our customers. How do we use AI when we use AI for customers' program or data? How do we use AI to protect that? For example, Jonas mentioned that don't use the public AI chat box for customer information. If you're writing the secret product descriptions, don't use that because information can be leaked. And how can we use that? How do we customize? How do we protect? What's the policy? We create very detailed. Now we also educate our customers to inform, to be transparent with them, to help them to adopt the right solution. And the second thing we did, as you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, how do we avoid the bias? How do we make sure we don't have the incorrect statement or the training how do we clean up the training, how do we target the training content to make sure AI plays a correct role in this. So removing bias is another thing. We create a guidance how to train the content, or what kind of content can be trained, can be used as a training material. And also we talk about the performance, we talk about the cost, we talk about how to human be in the loop to make sure the AI can provide a very responsible result as the customer needs. So we create very detailed guidance to the whole company. And besides the technical training, how to create the code, how to create a document, how to run, we're more focusing how to make sure we are aligned with the policies. We are protecting the customer's data, and how do our team members to understand and work with customers in this transparent way for doing that.
Are you two both using Chat GPT like in your day-to-day?
We're using that in a different way. Well, we're not just using the chatbot. We're actually using the APIs. We have
right. You're using the real AI, right? But for dummies like me that don't know how to use APIs, like I have the Chat GPT console open. I have a subscription and all of that stuff, right? Do you guys, specifically you two, Jonas and Wei, do you use that in your day-to-day?
I use that very carefully. I don't use that for the customer data. I don't use that for our sensitive content. We test it. For example, I ask them to create different transcriptions for sometimes, and how to, if I create for testing purpose. But mostly we're using the API part, which is more secured. According to Chat GPT, if you use the API part, that your private data are secured. It's not merged to the public tool. So that's why we are not using the chatbot for the company information.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, no, the reason I'm just asking is because it's like I think we're still trying to figure out how we can use some of this technology in our day-to-day. And I personally, I'll just give an anecdote, have been playing around with it quite a lot. And I know everyone here at NIMSY has been playing around with it nonstop since it's come out. And so yesterday I needed to, because I procrastinated to the last minute, I needed to put together a proposal, a 10-page proposal for this RFP that we were working on. And I had a lot of similar proposals in the past that I had written. But this proposal I was working on yesterday had a requirement. It needed to be at a slightly different project scope, slightly different timeline, slightly different things. So I couldn't just copy and paste stuff. And it also needed to be within 10 pages. So I saved myself a lot of time by being able to show the Chat GPT, the chat engine, like, here's the past proposals I worked on. Here's the scope of work for this one. Can you please help me condense this into 10 pages? And, and it was still a lot of work. Like, it's not a magic bullet. And I think people that haven't played around with it think that, oh, it's just a magic bullet. It's still a significant amount of work. There's a lot of post-editing, so to speak, that you need to do in it. But it saved me hours. And that's just me, not knowing how to do APIs and all of that stuff. And sorry, go on.
Yeah, you touched a very interesting point. In the industry, we call it prompt engineering. So how do you ask the questions, right? You mentioned you have to organize your questions, descriptions, so the AI can respond for the very related result. So how do you ask the questions? We call it prompt engineering. And also, you didn't train the engine. So this time you have to use everything you could possibly
start from scratch.
Your needs in the questions. For us, if we need to use in the production, first thing of course we need to do is to create the prompt engineering by a lot of testing, a lot of reviewing, and then we need to train the data. For example, for you 10 pages articles, if you train the AI with your previous publishing content, how do you think in the old articles you read, and also train the terminologies, per terminologies listed there. Also train the questions, how people ask and how they answer. So more training you have in the Chat GPT called fine tuning. The more fine tuning you have, the better result you have. And so this really you use the chatbot, it's really touching the point how to use the AI from the engineering point of view. You need to ask the right questions. You need to evaluate the questions, and after that, you need to do the post evaluation, and also need to do post training to keep improving the AI. If you use the customized engine, the more you're doing with that, the better result you will get.
And going back to very good points. Going back to doing more with less. How can we eliminate waste or improve efficiency in localization programs? You mentioned, I think it was you that mentioned it earlier, Wei, and we kind of passed over it. You mentioned transcreation, and transcreation is one of the things that for the longest time, we have struggled to optimize because the very nature of what we're doing is a very human-centric thing. You can't use translation memories. So reuse is not an option. So everything's done from scratch. It takes a specialized talent to do it. Even transcreation nowadays is being is not safe from advancements in technology. Have you seen any interesting use cases where clients are taking a look at replacing or augmenting their transcreation workflows, still keeping a human in the loop, of course, but utilizing technology and natural language processing to help with that?
Yes, transcreation is an interesting part because, as you mentioned, we can use the translation memory. It doesn't really heavily depend on the terminologies. So it really depends on the the linguistic specialist. So in the past, when we do the transcription, we use our linguistic tool. We choose the very experienced translators, and we choose multiple people to do that the same way, right? So we have to pick. It's really depends on the experience, depends on the understanding of local culture, also depends on imagination. So in the past, we choose a lot of resources to do it together. It's really it's not a cost efficient. Also, it takes time consuming. But now when using AI, we can ask AI to create multiple choices and provide the suggestions to the linguistic expertise to help them to choose. And also AI can read the instructions from the original content creation. So this is for a product logo, this is a product slogan, so this is a marketing purpose. So AI can read those instructions. We can tell them to be more drama, more emotional, or more customer focusing. Those things can be trained into the AI engine for the particular answer. So we can use those instructions, ask AI to create 10 different suggestions. And then we have the reviewers to choose. And the reviewer may come out a different way or different suggestion, but the 10 suggestions will definitely help them to be able to say the different options.
Yeah, it provides like a starting point. It's not,
Yes,
once again,
exactly.
It's not doing the work for you, but
No.
it's really kind of changing the way that we work. So rather from starting from scratch, it's, I've been calling it post-editing transcreation.
Yes.
Essentially.
It's a good use case too for using LLMs, because one of the issues with LLMs is the cost, right? So processing large volumes, you do use a lot of processing power that comes with cost. But with transcreation, it's like could be one slogan, and you get 10 suggestions for it. It doesn't really require that much effort for the engine to do that. So it's a good use case in that way too, but it definitely requires human in the loop to do the review or the selection of which one to go with.
Exactly.
All right. So to wrap this up here, when I think of Centific, I think of the 3-word catchphrase, lovable customer experiences, right? I think you guys are kind of known for your rabid commitment to creating lovable experiences, not just for your customers, but for your customers' end users, right? And the role that localization, culturalization, all of that stuff plays into it. So I wanted to kind of close us up today talking about lovable customer experiences within the context of doing more with less, within the context of we might be experiencing budget cuts or financial strain at our organization, as so many tech companies are right now. And so I pulled another quote, and this is from Teresa, if you're still there, you can try to find this and link to this in the comments for everybody. But I pulled this quote from Localize to Create Lovable Customer Experiences, available at Centific.com. It says, every time your customers engage with your company, talking to customer support, reading documentation, looking at an advertisement, or using your product, their experience defines how they view your brand. As analyst Brian Solis once wrote, experience is the new brand. And I wanted to kind of use this as a jumping off point to talk about, and I think we've hit a lot of these points today, but just to recap as we're finishing up the podcast for today, how are economic downturns, how are budget cuts, how is running a lean localization program? Talk to me. How is that not in direct competition with creating lovable customer experiences? What's your elevator pitch for this? If I come to you as a customer and say, look, I'm being asked to reduce my budget. I don't have the resources I did last year. I'm being asked to do more with less, but I still want to keep this hyper focus on my end user experience. What's your answer to them?
So you asked about RFPs before and why companies do RFPs. So looking at cost is definitely one aspect, of course. But a question that comes up in pretty much every RFP recently is, how do we redefine what good quality is and what really matters? Does it matter if it's in compliance with the style guide that was written 5 years ago, or does it need to have an LQA score of 99 or 98?
Don't get me started on LQA scores.
Customer experience, right? So we've been trying to come up with a model that really measures the customer experience instead of the LQA score or the language score, whatever you call it, right? And what resonates with your local customers, the users of whatever product or content that you localize. And we've invested in technology to support that. Of course, you can go out, you can do sentiment analysis, and you can try to gather data points, or you can talk to your customers, or look at social media and see if someone is commenting about your localization experience, which happens rarely. But we have a few different ways of doing that, supporting that with tools to get customer sentiment input on the localized content, tools to track the user journey and get input and capture how the user journey looks in each language. And with those tools, you can get some measurement on how the localization is performing from a customer experience perspective and tie that back to your budgets. So if you're spending less, does it mean that the customer experience suffers? Or can you use that to decide which parts of the customer journey or the user journey of your content should you focus on to make sure that the customer experience doesn't suffer in spite of spending less money on that? So it's an interesting area to look at and really try to redefine what good quality is and how it impacts your customer experience as well as your performance essentially in the markets in terms of sales and so on.
Well said. Anything to add, Wei?
No, I totally agree. The customers have different needs and different challenges. So as a partner, we are working with them closely to try to address their concerns. But we're using this AI technology and no other technologies, not as a solution, but also as a partnership tools to be able to reduce the cost for the customers and to overcome the challenges together.
Well said as well. Well, before we get out of here today, I want to go take a look. And I just realized you guys can't hear me as I'm going through all of the chat because my sound system's not working. you guys could hear me, but the audience couldn't hear me. But if you might have read the chats on screen. I wanted to end with Khadijah's comment here. How to leverage the AI language models to optimize and free the localizers to focus on quality, adapt these new AI efficiencies, and innovate to stay ahead of the game and stay relevant. I think that kind of encapsulates what we've been talking about today as far as AI is a tool. It is a tool to leverage, not a force that's going to replace, a market force that's going to completely disrupt everything. It's going to change the way that we do our work, but the work is still going to be there, I think is a good way of summarizing it. And with that, gentlemen, any closing thoughts from you today before we start wrapping this up for real?
Exciting times, right? Lots going on. We need to update our State of Localization report, and I'd be happy to talk to you again, Tucker, in like a month or 2 months and see where we are there. And I'm sure we need a version 3 of the report at that point.
Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up that I was going to be highlighting that on the podcast today. So I kind of put you on the spot.
No,
but
it's great.
It's too good not to talk about.
Still relevant.
Right? So awesome. Wei?
No, the same. Thank you so much for having us here. It's such a pleasure to talk about. We'll also keep learning ourselves. Things are changing so fast. Let's do it together.
All right. And we'll see you at Local Lunch next week.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you. Yes. Can't wait.
Alrighty, guys. Well, going further, if you want more information, like I said, check out those links that Teresa and I, to a lesser extent, have been throwing into the chat here on LinkedIn. If you're not following us on LinkedIn or listening to the podcast, you can go to www.centific, that's CENTIFIC.com, and find out more information about all of the resources we looked at. Once again, my name is Tucker Johnson, host of NIMSY Live, and it's been my pleasure to join you all today. I appreciate our guests, Jonas and Wei. I appreciate my colleagues here at NIMSY Insights doing all of the hard work so I can have these fun conversations. Excuse me. I appreciate antibiotics. I appreciate everybody in our industry who fills out NIMSY surveys and schedules briefings with us so that we can share our knowledge with the rest of the industry. And lastly, I appreciate you, the audience who are joining us live today, all of the dialogue in chat, everybody who left comments, questions, and criticisms. And I look forward to next time. Cheers.